Hello and welcome to another episode of The Coolkarnis. This is your host and host, Sanjeev Kulkarni. Today we have with us the Loha Purush or the Iron Man, Deepak Raj. If I were to sum up Deepak's journey in one word, I would say endurance. Endurance to continue running despite struggling to complete just 400 meters on the very first run and then going on to complete many marathons, triathlons, and 25 plus Ironman titles. Endurance to continue his journey as a fitness coach, leaving his job at a time when he was doing quite well in his IT career, and then going on to convince a brand like Ironman to be interested in India and do all the legwork and host the first Ironman in 2019 in India, and then going through the tough times of COVID but undeterred, coming back and continuing to host Ironman, and they will be hosting their fifth Ironman this year, next month. So, wishing them all the very best. Deepak's journey will surely be educative to you, it will be informative, and most certainly inspiring. And hope at the end of this interview, you will be inspired to pick up at least one of the endurance fitness skills that he talks to us about. Before you all start listening to the podcast, I have two requests to make. First is this is a Zoom interview. So in case there are any tech challenges that you experience, I apologize. I'll better it the next time. The second one, of course, is requesting your help to like, share, subscribe, and comment on our content. Because the more you talk to us, the more we learn about what you want, and YouTube also happens to like it. So here you go. Enjoy this episode of The Cool Karnis. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Cool Karnis, and this is your host and host, Sanjeev Kulkarni. Today we have with us the Loha Purush or the Iron Man, Deepak Raj with us. Welcome to our show, The Cool Karnis, Deepak.
Thank you for having me here.
How are you doing, Deepak?
Doing good, doing good.
Wonderful, and thank you so much for joining us on this show. Deepak, you and I have known each other for a little over a decade now, more as colleagues at work. But this is the new avatar of Deepak. And how would you introduce yourself to our listeners?
I'm somebody who's just trying to balance a lot of things when it comes to work, family, and my own personal sort of hobbies and passion. I think that's what has been the last 11 years post the Infosys world, where I still have a lot of friends, colleagues, way back all the way from 2000. But right now, trying to build a solution for health and fitness professionals, health and fitness for everybody. And I've tried to make that my career. And after 11 years, I can say that it is my career. Now, just looking to expand on a few things and get a lot more people involved.
Absolutely. And Deepak, I can say, knowing you, that this is you being you, you have given a very modest introduction about yourself and what you do. But to set it straight to our viewers, I must tell you that Deepak, when we worked together and his last stint at Infosys, he was an extremely successful account manager for one of the largest accounts that we had in the region. From that, at that kind of a rising peak, if I may call it, he decides to take a break and get into this journey, which is his passion. And that exactly is the theme of our podcast, The Cool Karnis, where we want to understand how people break these boundaries, how they defy these stereotypes and carve or forge a new path. Deepak, you have done that. And what we want to uncover is that journey. But I would request if we can start from where this journey started all the way. Like tell us about who you are, where you grew up, and how that journey started.
Local Bangalore boy. So primarily, I think the first time I went anywhere out of Bangalore was when an Infosys sent me to the Adidas headquarters, Herzogenaurach in Germany. Right. So all along, been in Bangalore, Joseph's High School, college, then did my mechanical engineering. And I think all the way through, the only common sort of sport connect was watching a lot of sport. I think I used to watch a lot of whether it was Olympics and that type of things way back in the 80s and 90s. And then when India managed to get the cables and the channels and everything else, then maybe a lot more into basketball. That's always been my passion all the way from high school. That's one thing which I've been there. But outside of that, I think just like anybody else growing up in India, play cricket and things like that. And then got into Infosys, and after that, obviously the professional career started, and all through that, things outside of work with respect to how I was and what I thought is a good life when it comes to food and everything around the social elements. I think that definitely got me to a stage where I wasn't too happy about where I was, and then that in turn triggered into a bunch of things, and here I am, right? So, but yeah, early days, I think just like anybody else, Bangalore, a lot of IT sort of pathway on that.
Okay. So one thing is surely established in this background is that you fit the stereotype. You're a Bangalore
Yes.
boy, IT industry, traveled
Yeah.
outside the country, right? This is how all of our
Yeah.
journeys has been, at least as the 90s and the 2000s grad kids that we all are. So you go from the land of Purandaradasa all the way to the land of Adidas. My joke, sorry. Uh, so of course, there is that going to onsite for the first time, but I believe that's where you first got introduced into this world of marathons or essentially the fitness, so to say, because in India, while you were into a lot of sports, or let me ask you the question that way: you were into a lot of sports in India, but were you also into fitness? Did you have a sense of what fitness is at that time?
I used to play some basketball, and I still remember high school. I couldn't get into the. I think I got into the B team, not the A team. We had a lot more better, talented people. But even in the B team, for me to sort of make that, it was. I still remember my high school basketball coach telling me I just lacked fitness and endurance and the ability to just stay on the court for a thing without getting, huffing and puffing types, right? So that's where I was. Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was into sport and I was very fit or active. Definitely not. I love basketball. I used to play a lot, and that's about it.
So how did that journey in Germany start, where you got into the world of probably not fitness, but explain that to us in terms of what happened there in Germany.
In general, once you go on site overseas, Infosys, great company, and everything's good around you, right? So I think this was 2000, late 2000.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was just 23 going, just 23 and just about to get 24 when everything was there. And you look around you, well, good pay, you're in a foreign country. I love food. I still do. I'm a foodie. So that's there. And, whatever you want to do around that in terms of partying and everything else. So everything was good. Life is good. But at the same time, I think my weight was not where it is. I had changed all the way from high school to college to things, given my food habits. And playing basketball once or twice a week is not really a. It's obviously better than not doing anything, but definitely you could see. And yeah, I think I was maybe 100 or 100 plus in terms of weight. And I was seeing people twice my age, be it around there, locals in Germany and from various other countries who had come there to work in Adidas, who were either or definitely more fitter than me, and coming to work while cycling, go for afternoon workouts, whether it's swim or a run, later in the evening, play some team sport and things. And then I slowly started to get into that. And then when I saw, I said, well, I need to do something about it and start taking care of myself type. So I think that slowly came in. It's not one moment of something. I think it just built around you when you're in that environment where everyone around you is so focused and doing it, and it's a sporting company and they're very encouraging. I think definitely that environment helped. And before even I got into running, I think there was this instance. This was the pre-social media days, so there's no pictures there's no pictures to sort of show me in that. But primarily, I bought a pair of inline skates, the rollerblade skates in Adidas I think it was 5 Deutschmarks, some sample sale. They used to do some sample sales for all of the people working there. It was just always lying in my closet, and I've never even worn it once and didn't know how to skate. And then there was a marathon happening in the local town. We're living in Hetzogenarok. There was a event. There was a running event and there was obviously a skating event. So I said, you know what? Let me go sign up. Maybe that'll force me to learn how to skate. So I did that. Sort of learned how to skate and managed to finish that 38-kilometer skating marathon. And that sort of brought me a thing to say, all right, if I could learn how to skate and do things, maybe I can run, I can take up marathons, a lot of people doing things. So that was sort of, a culmination of a few things happening. But I'm very thankful for the people around and a lot of things, that whole ecosystem and support system out there, which helped me to take that first step.
So two things I kind of caught from this. So first is that, the environment obviously has a lot of impact, because if you see everybody doing something, it's not about feeling misfit or anything, but you're automatically pushed in that direction to try and do something similar.
Absolutely.
Second thing I caught is that you had actually never done any inline skating, and you actually learned that and you did a 38-kilometer inline skating. Wow.
Marathon, yeah. I mean, the same day there was also a 42K run marathon. I had obviously not even thought about it, but it was 38 kilometers because some part of the course is not skate friendly, if I may say so, right? So that's the reason it was 38 kilometers. But yeah, it was a lot. And I think there were about 220 people who came. I wasn't the last. I think there were three more people who finished after me. So, but yeah, I was one of the last few to finish. But it gave me a full sense of sort of pride and achievement that if I could sort of learn how to skate and do a marathon, I think it sort of triggered a bit of a switch in my head to say, all right, if you sort of focus on something and get there and things. So that gave me a lot of confidence for maybe taking up some other goals.
So from skating, you then went towards running, is it? Is that how it
Because
naturally turned?
I definitely wanted to take care of myself better in terms of my weight and things like that. So I took up running. It wasn't easy. I think the first day I still remember running. Maybe I don't know. We didn't have a watch or anything then in terms of it. We just ran. I don't think I ran anything more than 200 meters, I would say, 200 to 300 meters. And then I was huffing and puffing and actually had to walk back home, right? So that was the state of the fitness. And that is something I sort of started also and put through. But yeah, skating one had built a bit of fitness. So that was a bit of a checkpoint. I mean, that was a good starting point. But once again, after that, I didn't do anything, right? So after a few months, I said, I need to take up running. So then took up running and started to slowly build it up from few minutes to whatever it is, and then that journey started. And at some point again, everybody in the office, Sarida's office, there were talking about Berlin Marathon. So I said, all right, let's go and sign up. But before that, I sort of just built my way to running 1K, 2K, all the way to 5K. Then one fine day I ran a lot more, building it up, and I asked somebody, what do you think this route is? We didn't have GPS. I mean, we had GPS, but I didn't have a watch or anything. So he said 8 or 10 kilometers. So that was like, wow. I managed to reach 10 and I said, I'm going to run it again. And same route I ran the next day and felt good that, okay, I was able to run 8 or 10 kilometers and then decided, yeah, I'm good for a marathon now. So I went and signed up for Berlin as a coach. And looking back, obviously, that's not enough time. I think I gave myself 3 months, 3 months, I would say. Not the most ideal of it. I would say September 30th was the race, July, August, September. Yeah, something around that time. And then eventually trained, talked a lot, read a bit, took some tips. And yeah, that's where my sort of endurance fitness journey started.
So obviously we'll come to the coach Deepak trying to train the 20-year ago Deepak. But if I got this right, what you're saying is you were like I'll just say me. I'm hoping that there are others also like me, but you were like me in the sense that you couldn't run 200 meters stretch at a stretch without huffing and puffing. And from there, you kind of built up your endurance and were able to do a 10K. And then you signed up for a marathon on the basis of that.
Yeah, but look, first day you run 200, you'll be surprised. Next day you can actually run 300 or 400, right? In the sense, but it comes quickly. That initial part comes quickly. It gives you a bit of confidence. But yeah, looking back, if you've just not even done even if I've not done any race or a 5K or a 10K, I thought I had to run 8 or 10K. But at the same time, I had only a small window where I was going to be in Germany, right? So that was my opportunity to say, hey man, more marathons were not that popular yet in India. I think there was one maybe in Pune and a few things like that, right? So this is you're talking about 2001, 2002 days. So I had a very small window, and I said before the project ends and I'm sent back to India, let me take the opportunity and do something there. So that was the trigger, and I'm sure there were other marathons in Germany, but the fact that 20 or 30 people from Adidas were going, and Adidas were actually taking care of some things, maybe the registration fees and giving us a bit of Adidas jerseys. Obviously, everything else was up to you. But I thought it's a good start. Let me take care of that. Let me take the opportunity and try myself.
That's amazing. I mean, all of us in very vividly and very fondly remember our first on-site days. But I don't know how many of us can probably say that you got inspired to try and do something like this when you were there. Most of us at least would have it like I want to visit this place, this place, this place, buy this, buy that kind of things. But here you are, who you motivated yourself to participate in something of this nature, and that's probably the start of how the journey started. From there, you have now come towards where you are, and we'll go on this journey step by step. So what happened next? I mean, you were there in Berlin for a while, and then the Australia journey. So guide us in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, Herzogenaurach, which is the headquarters of Adidas, is a very small place. And after doing Berlin Marathon, and work was good, getting good opportunities there to stay on for more time within Infosys. So that was good. The environment was good. I love sports. So working for a sporting company means you're around talking about sports, knowing about shoes. I love shoes too. So what better place to sort of, imagine the first project you get in Infosys is a shoe company, and who doesn't like that, especially for me. So things were going good there. Obviously, just doing the first marathon did not necessarily fix everything in terms of my health, fitness, food, lifestyle. Nothing, I would say. Along the way, a few things changed, but still, my weight was completely up and down. Even after that marathon is over, you go back to your sort of almost normal self. Even though I tried to keep myself in touch with running and things, it was not the same. You almost needed to maybe sign up for another race, 12 months from now, and keep that thing. It was not, but it definitely started that direction in the right direction. But yeah, was there for a few years and tried my hand at. There was a small triathlon in the village. It was called Hetzoman, the swimming. Then I thought, okay, that's the next good challenge. They let me try triathlon, and I didn't know much about it. So they said it's a swim in a swimming pool, and there is the cycling is 20 kilometers in the village and 5 kilometer run in the forest, which is a nice trail run and track, which everybody, including me, we were always running there. So yeah, I think it was a borrowed cycle, and I did not know. I mean, I knew how to swim maybe for 20, 25 meters, but it sort of gave me a confidence to say, okay, we need to swim. I think it was 400-meter swim. So yeah, that was sort of the next journey to say take up another challenge of trying to sort of add a few more things than just running, because it was not easy to just stay motivated only with running and things like that. So I thought this is a good opportunity to try something. So yeah, I had to build my swimming from whatever the initial one lapper which you could do to at least 400 meters, and then cycling, running. So that was my first sort of trial into triathlon. I think I was the only one who had to take breaks after every 25 meters in the pool because everyone would just be finishing and getting out. But I still remember every 15 minutes, a new wave or a batch of people would jump into the pool and do that, right? So every 15 minutes, X amount of people jump in, and most of them are out. 400 meters, most people are out in 7, 8, 9 minutes, maybe even faster, right? But I took the entirety of whatever 14 and a half minutes. I was the only one. Obviously, there are a lot of people cheering, most of it cheering so that I could get out and they could jump in. But primarily, Yeah, but I thought swimming, nah, stay with running. So did a bit more running, but that triathlon thing always stayed in my mind that I should keep trying my hand at triathlon. I had an opportunity once more in the US, and then when I went to Australia, I sort of deep dived into it literally. But those formative years with Adidas, with people around, and that whole lifestyle until I started to eat right and things, a very solid foundation which is still serving me good.
So Deepak, one question. Sorry, you said 20 years ago you did not know what a triathlon was, and so you signed on to it. uh, I'm still there. I'm still in that 21 years ago, 20 years ago. So for me and for others who are like me, can you uncover what a triathlon is?
Triathlon is a multi-sport. What I mean by multi-sport is it involves three disciplines: swimming, cycling, and running in that order.
Hmm.
All right. So you swim, then you transition into cycling. From cycling, then you transition on to running. The transition could mean you getting out of your swimming clothes and then getting onto your cycling clothes, helmet, gloves, shoes, cycle onto your cycling, finish your cycling part, come back in, helmet off, shoes off, different shoes on, and maybe start running. Right. So it happens one after another. The race starts when you start swimming, the race stops, or the race ends for you when you finish your run. Right. So that's your triathlon. Swimming, cycling, and running in that order with different distances, right? So there are sprint distances, mini sprint, Olympic distance, half Ironman, and Ironman distances, right? So the Ironman distance is 3.8 kilometers swim, 180 kilometers cycling, and then a marathon, which is 42.2 running.
Hmm.
A half Ironman is half of that. The Olympic distance is smaller than the half, and it can go all the way to a mini sprint, which could be a 400-meter swim, 20-kilometer cycling, and a 5K run. Those are
Is what
very
you did in Germany.
customizable based on what's available.
So what you did in Germany would sit as a mini sprint. I would
Mini
assume.
sprint. It was a don't think, I mean, 400-meter swim, that's what I remember. Felt like a lot more, but it wouldn't be more. And then a 20-kilometer cycling and a 5-kilometer run. That's what it was. Yeah, that was my first trial at triathlon.
And to put things into perspective, 400 meters in an Olympic size pool would be what, 8 laps, like back and
If
forth?
you call one side as one lap, yes. This one was not an Olympic-sized swimming pool. This was a 25-meter pool, from what I remember.
So
Because
16
I
laps.
don't think I was taking a break every 25 meters. I don't think it was 50 meters, but yeah, eight times in an Olympic size.
Going back. Wow. Okay. I'm still kind of trying to digest those, get it in those numbers that you said, right? I mean, 1.8 kilometers of swimming, and I believe from whatever I have seen, this is usually in the open, right? It's not done in a swimming pool
It's
at
an
all.
open one. Yeah, the mini sprint and smaller triathlons can be pool based, but most triathlons are open water based. So the Ironman swim, which is 3.8 kilometers, happens either in a lake or a sea, ocean. Very unlikely a river because of the things, but there are some sort of water bodies which may suit you. But primarily, it is always an open water thing. There are triathlons which happen swimming pool based, but primarily it's always mostly open water.
Sure. And you did bring up Iron Man in this context, so we'll come to that in a bit. But from what it sounds like, these are if I could call them as grades, and Iron Man actually sits all the way high up there, right? But still sticking on to triathlon. So you did that mini triathlon, and now your record is. We'll come to your record also in a bit, but your record is pretty high up there in terms of the number of triathlons. So how did the first proper triathlon happen for you, and where did it happen?
Then after a few years in Germany and then about 6 months in US and Japan, got an opportunity to go to Australia. And as soon as I went there, I thought, okay, it's a good. I tried my hand at triathlon. I mean, that mini triathlon, mini sprint distances. I tried one more in the US, where again the swim was 400 or 500 meters, and struggled again. And obviously I was not focused on swimming and things, but at the same time, it just did not say, you know what, Deepak, I was telling myself, just stay on land, just focus on running. So I started to focus more on running and things. But when I got an opportunity to go to Australia, and again, Australia always had good swimmers. I thought it must be something in the water they drink. So let me give it another shot. And so I always had that thought of getting better at swimming. And then I saw something on ESPN. They were showing a 60-minute capsule of an Ant-Man. I think it was Ant-Man Florida or something, where they show you, once the event has happened, a month or so after that, they have a 60-minute highlight capsule, interviews, and the whole thing. And that's when I had not heard about Ant-Man before. That was the first time I even heard about Ant-Man. Then I saw those distances of swim, cycle, and run. The only thing that stuck in my head is 3.8 kilometers swim in open water, whatever sea or ocean. I said, all right, if I can train and do that, I'll be a great swimmer. So that was the thing. And I said, let me go after that. I remember speaking to my wife, and I think she said, you're crazy. Well, I said, that wasn't a no, right? That was a no, that was not a no, that was not an S. But then I said, let me work my way towards it. So read a bit. There was one Ironman Australia happening in Port Macquarie. This was 2006, but late 2006, early 2007. Then I decided to sign up. But before that, you had to do a half before. So the whole thing started to come along, to sort of reading about it, getting some guidance, buying a cycle, improving your swimming, and the entire thing of putting together a plan. That first one happened on 2008, April 6th, 2008 in Port Macquarie. That was my first one.
Wow. Love how you remember that date. Uh, but thinking that you want to do it to the time where you're preparing yourself, you had done a mini triathlon, so you probably had a sense. But of course, that was too short. Did you do this training yourself, or how did you prepare yourself for it?
Yeah, I remember buying a book called Going Long, Training for Ironman Types, Gordon Blinn and somebody. So that was my sort of book. This was 2006 and 7. Yeah, there were obviously a lot of articles. There were coaches also, but I didn't know too much about it. So decided to, given I was sort of, I'd always trained myself for the running part and just helping a few people here and there types. I utilized sort of the same principles of, building a good base, structuring your training and building that slow, gradual thing, making sure you're recovering and then hitting those goals. Just it's about hitting those goals. Can I swim 100 meters continuously? Can I swim 200 meters continuously? 400? Can I swim a kilometer? And the same way for cycling and running, and then putting it all together. So the plan was, I know it sounds very academic and theoretical, but having sort of ran a marathon, I just tried to apply my same things there and talk to whomever I could. But that book was a big foundation of putting together that plan and going after that goal of completing my first one.
Wonderful. And as you were explaining this, there's just thought that came to me. So obviously, it's easier to take breaks when you're on the land, right? Whether it's cycling or running, if you want to take a break, you can just take a break. But when you're on that 3.8 kilometer swim out in the ocean, or sea, whatever, uh, what do you do? I mean, how do you take a break? Sorry,
You
it's a very
can,
dumb
you can.
question, but never done that, so
No,
I'm just curious.
that's a very common question for anybody who either is getting into the sport or even if they're curious about the sport, right? I mean, first of all, by the time you get to that start point and do that, you wouldn't need a right. It's a hard one to tell people, especially if you're training for one,
Mm.
right? You'll be all right, right? It's just not an assurance because that time it's not like, oh my god, my hands are tired, I can swim, right? It's usually you're fit enough by then. But yes, even if you're tired, in some cases you can hold on to things which are there, whether it's a floating buoy, sometimes there's a pontoon in some races where there is, but otherwise there could be lifeguards, there could be people on surfs and kayaks. The rule is you can't hold on to anything which is moving. It means you can't get assistance to move forward,
Right.
right? You can always hold on to things if you want to take a break. But in all likelihood, if you're wearing a wetsuit, which is quite thick, and you're in seawater, all you have to do is just almost stop swimming and just stay, and the flotation and the buoyancy of the salt water and things gives you enough to just stay afloat and take a break if you want, right? So there are different ways you can do that, but I can understand the same nervousness for me, like what do I do? I didn't know how to even tread water. I remember when I was trying to do my first half, it was a deep water start, which means everybody should already be in the water, not on the beach. When you start, you can't just stand because it's deep. So everyone's just treading water. I didn't know how to tread water. I was the only one on the beach when we were doing our first half iron distance. And I'm like, that's all right. The clock goes. I can take 30 seconds more, but I'll be on the land and I will walk into it and start, right? So when I didn't realize it's quite easy to tread water, right? So mentally it is hard. But yeah, to answer your question, I think practicing that in a pool before gives you that confidence, right? These are me now talking post looking back and saying, and now that I'm in coaching and things, those are the things you prepare for it in a swimming pool, in a deep end of a swimming pool, practicing those things, getting comfortable, fixing your goggles, what happens if water gets in, all those scenarios, you can be very well prepared that when it eventually happens, you'll be calm. You know what to do.
It's interesting. Another one of those, again, naive questions, if you may. But most of us, at least, would be comfortable or have tried swimming in a swimming pool. Obviously, ocean is different, right? You have the waves, it's saline water. How is that experience for the first time? I mean, now we have done it so often, but if you recollect the first time, do you need to do something special to prepare for that also, or? uh,
You need to get over the fear of open water. Some people have it. Some people may get it when they first time go into it. They might not have it. But most people have or something, right? So in my case, I'm not very comfortable swimming in open water still. I might have done a lot of Ironmans. I've been in the sport for a long time. But yeah, I only swim when it's needed in groups. I'm not because water is a different medium, right? Nothing's supposed to touch you. Right. Imagine you're in the open water, something touches you, I freak out. I don't know about you, I don't know about others. Because there's nothing supposed to be around you. Simple as that. And that still is a thing. But for a period, slowly I've got over it. But I had to do an open water first swim before I could get over that fear. So I remember in Nusa there was a 1 kilometer ocean swim. This was 2007, 20th of May. I remember I have to get over this fear. I can't like go into a race not having the confidence to swim in an open water. And that was one of my first opportunities. But yeah, so I had to. Maybe it was Jaws and Steven Spielberg movies and things which I've always, things, but maybe that was when I saw it too young. But
Fear
in
is
general,
there.
open water fear still exists for me and for a lot of people, but we sort of park it aside and move on.
Deepak, I can't tell you how in a strange way happy I feel because about 3 months ago we were in Cairns, and we did that, like go into the deep end and
Okay.
do this
Yeah.
swing. Uh, I wouldn't call myself a swimmer, but at least not in front of you. But I can say that I can keep myself afloat, right? I can swim. I could not swim even 30 or 40 meters beyond because the immediate fear that just got into your head, and this is with everything, right? You have lifeguards there, you're wearing your flotation device, everything. The fact that your feet cannot touch the ground and the ground is so below is so, I don't know how to explain, terrifying in a way, right? Maybe if I go there again, I might be better. But at least those 3 hours or so that we were there, I definitely went around, but I would just be in the 15-meter range, just check out a few things and come back. But yeah, fair enough. So just feels good that you're also in that same. That's how the journey started for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, that's not like, oh my God, what if I get tired or what if I can't? That fear is gone because I'm comfortable with swimming. But the fear of unknown of what is in an open water, that is something which for me, that's the bigger one for me. I think the part about, well, if it's deep, it's deep. I can tread water, I can swim myself to whatever. That confidence is calm. But yeah, the general open water fear, there are two, in a way, two buckets. One, you're talking about that part, which is mostly the bigger one for most people,
Right.
right? Once they get comfortable with that, what I'm talking to you is very maybe smaller for some people. And I don't mean to, as part of this, put a lot of things in people's mind if it wasn't the case. But for me, it was always been that.
Yeah, fair enough. So now coming back to the Ironman part, so that's how the journey started. I think we just skimmed past Port Macquarie, but if you are able to recollect, can you run us through how that first triathlon happened for you, the experience, and just also help us understand? You did talk about the distances, but I believe there are certain measures as well in terms of how long you have to take for certain things and so on, right? That's probably the sport or the competition. So if you can walk us through that for our viewers.
Yeah, I think much earlier during those times, you had to successfully complete a half iron distance within a certain time before you could register for a full. And that sort of rule doesn't exist now. But at that time, which means my first milestone was get myself to train and do a half Iron distance within this stipulated time, right? So that was one thing. So slowly built myself up to able to cycle a few things, and then swimming, building those distances. I remember moving into a different apartment because that apartment had a 25-meter lap pool. Like I didn't have to, I could just go down and swim, right? So I remember moving apartments to say, you know what, I need these assets and resources a little bit available because so that I can swim it more often. And I used to take a long time to swim those distances, whether it was 500 or 1K and things. So for me, so that slowly built up, and then eventually finished the first half Iron distance. And that was a good confidence that okay, now it's there, and now I can go register and sign up for my first full one, which I did. So this was in about September 2007 when I did the first half, and then signed up for the full, which was on April 6, 2008. And then it's obviously a lot more running, a lot more swimming, a lot more cycling, so as to speak, and getting there. But the biggest thing for me was I need to be able to finish within the cutoff times, like you were mentioning, right? There are some measures. So you need to finish the swim in 2 hours and 15. It used to be 2 hours 15 for a number of years. In the last maybe 10 years, or maybe before, it has now been moved to 2 hours 20. I think even the 2009 and 10 is when it was starting to change, basically doubling up the half Iron distance. So 2 hours 15 was the swim cutoff on the day of my race. And my biggest worry was I won't make the swim cutoff times because my swimming speed was sort of 30 minutes, 32 minutes per kilometer. And that is in a pool, in a lap pool, right? Suddenly in an open water, a little more different conditions, waves, people, and you're not going to swim the exact path. You're going to waver a bit. You're going to end up swimming 100, 200 meters more, or even more than that. So my worry was to meet that cutoff time. I think I slept only for an hour and a half the night before because I was very worried about once you don't meet that swim cutoff time, you can't cycle, you can't run, your day is over, right? But yeah, the 2 hours 15 was the swim cutoff time. I got it in 2 hours 13 minutes and 13 seconds. So came very close. Came very close. I think I was the last guy to make the cutoff time out of the water. And when you come to the area where all the cycles are parked, obviously all the cycles are gone. It's pretty much me out there. And then you have 10 and a half hours to finish the swim and the cycle, right? So 10 and a half hours. And I think I took about 10 hours and something, right? So I didn't cut it too fine. But at the same time, I was thinking if I get two punctures, and I was not that great in changing tubes and punctures, right? I thought one puncture, maybe two punctures, and that whatever buffer I had of meeting the bike cutoff time would be gone types. So thankfully nothing happened there, and I made the bike cutoff time I wouldn't say comfortably, but maybe 15 minutes, 18 minutes sort of a thing. And then the run started. I knew the run, I could run. We can walk, we can do things, right? There's no mechanical issues, bike issues, open water, swim, fitness issues, right? Running is, you're on the ground, you can feel your feet, like you said. And I've done a few marathons before, and I could do that. So there was a lot of thing to say. Now I need to meet the cutoff time, which I was comfortable with, and eventually finished that in 15 hours, 52 minutes, 38 seconds. Well, I won't forget my first ever one. 17 hours was the cutoff. So I finished it in about just under 16 hours. It was dark. I think it was just before 11 o'clock. So in the night, my wife was there all the way through. Obviously, she got a fair amount of, I gave her a fair amount of tension and things, especially not meeting that swim cutoff times and things. But yeah, eventually finished and felt good of all the months of hard work. But more importantly, it's a large challenge mentally, right? As much as all the physical distances are daunting, it's like every day putting in the work and going after it and putting it together. You get a very good sense of. I mean, there's a sense of accomplishment, but the more thing is a lot of joy that all those early mornings and everything else, culminated towards something. And yeah, and that definitely gave me a lot of strength and motivation to keep going after whatever next, whether it's sport or work, because all of these are what it's about setting goals, being disciplined, doing things which you can apply in various parts of your life.
Absolutely. And actually, before I get into the next question, I would request all our viewers as well please give a big round of applause for this. This is the high. I think, as you just explained it, we were all kind of going through the same journey, and we can kind of experience and feel it with you. Having finished it there, that itself is a big thing. Uh, so now back to the question. I just wanted to understand. So swimming, you said, is 2 hours 15 minutes, but did cycling also has a similar limit that you have to finish the 180K in a certain time?
Yeah, 10.5 hours for the
Then-
swim and the cycling. There's no separate time for the cycling.
Oh,
So so you start swimming within 2:15, your swim should be over and you should be out of that into your transition ready to cycle. And
sure.
you should finish your swimming and cycling in 10.5 hours. So
Got
there's
it.
no individual time for a cycling. So
So
if
it's
you finish your swimming in
incrementally
one hour, you have the rest of it if necessary.
for cycling. Okay, so it's incrementally they give a time for it. So effectively, in your case, because you took almost the whole of 2 hours 15 minutes, you would only have 8 hours
3 hours and
15
15
minutes of
minutes,
something.
15 minutes between transitions, changing over and things like that.
And
Almost,
what
yes.
terrain was it like? Was it hilly or was it for most
It
part
was
flat?
very not the most ideal of first ones, and I did not know Port Macquarie course was hilly until maybe a month or so before. I was talking to my friends in Rio Tinto, the company where I was managing the account through Infosys, and they were like, "Oh, you're doing so. You must have ridden Mount Kuta a number of times. Mount Kuta was one of those hills in Brisbane." Like, no. I'm like, okay. Then I said next day immediately. I said, all right, I should. I know Mount Kuta. I've been there maybe once or twice, maybe, but I don't think so. So I had to almost cycle my way there, and well, not the most pleasant of experiences because I was still getting comfortable to cycling cleats, cycling shoes which clip onto the pedals, right? So once and on a uphill when you stop, it's very hard to cleat and go on again, especially at my fitness where my speeds were very small. So yeah, I did not know the terrain. I had not studied the terrain that well to know that it's a hilly course and I should have trained appropriately. But whatever I could in the last 3 or 4 weeks, did a bit of it. But mostly that course was quite demanding. So yeah, I think it took just under 8 hours, I think, for that.
Wow, kudos to that as well. So we are talking of 180 kilometers in a hilly terrain being done under 8 hours. So that's definitely about 23, 24 as an average. I'm sure there would be a couple of breaks, I'm hoping, but still, that's a awesome achievement for the very first Ironman that you did. So once again, I'm still in just that celebratory mood with you. Huh, okay. Uh, taking from there, obviously, help us understand now that that was the first one. Like they say, the first million is the toughest, and after that, the number of million grows. So I believe your Ironman count is somewhat similar, isn't it? Do you have a count? How many you have done so far?
7.
27. Oh my God. The first one being in 2008. And by the way, that time frame will be special for me as well, because just a week after that, my daughter was born, the first one. So you're kind of both in a celebrity mode around that time frame. So in 16 years, 16 and a half years now, you have done 27 Ironmans. So that's almost one and a half per year in a way.
Yeah,
That's
I think some years I've done a bit more. Some years I took a bit of a hiatus based on work and a few other things. But yeah,
So let's go back to that 2008 timeframe, right? Like as you rightly said, like doesn't matter whether it's a work high or a professional, a professional high or a passion high. But when you have a high, it kind of has an overall impact on you, right? So everything around you starts kind of getting better or changing in a way. So you were doing quite well in your work role. So if you can just switch there a bit now, for those of us who come from the IT industry, for those of us who have been in different roles there, I'm sure you can appreciate and understand that being on site at a client location and wearing either a portfolio manager's hat or a sales hat is quite demanding and quite taxing. And on top of that, you have a passion like this, which also sucks enough out of you, right? How was all this happening in parallel? And then there is family, of course.
yeah, I think it was hard one to balance, especially because the amount of time this takes, right? So, and what it also takes is it eats into obviously there's mornings, so early morning, early starts, and get all your training done, then work, and And obviously, being in IT and also being with respect to management of portfolio sales and things, and working in Australia means the time zones, a lot of things, right? So your evenings are very unpredictable when it comes to be it for training or others, anything else. So I think it was just about managing those times and having a conversation with your partner, basically saying that this is because otherwise it's very hard to sustain whether it is signing up for your first one, training, or keeping up with the sport, especially when you start doing long distance triathlon, right? Running is all right. You know, you have one long run a week, which can happen on a Saturday, Sunday, and you still have the rest of the day. But when you go on a 100K ride or a 150K ride, or not every weekend, but we will be doing long rides, which means the number of hours you're away is higher when it comes to family and things. So it was about balancing that. Work was going well, so obviously had to take care of training in the mornings, then work. And between Saturday and Sunday, one day was a big training day and one day was a family day. That continues to be the case in the last whatever 20 plus years, and that way that balance is important. And so that kept on. Started to like the triathlon thing, so did a few more Ironman triathlons. It was obviously getting harder where the sleep was impacted because long hours of work plus getting early morning for training. Our body was starting to break down. And I remember doing a few triathlons. I was getting better from 16 hours to 14 to 13 to 12, but got close to 11, never under 11. And I remember doing three of these triathlons over a period of 2 years where I think I came close to 11 hours and 1 minute and 11 hours and 40 seconds, 11 hours and something, right? I came that close to going under 11 and I just couldn't break through. But I was training hard, but
Well, you were still
it was
working
very
at,
evident.
this was all when you were still working at Infosys, or?
Yeah, yeah. So the Infosys until 2013. So this was all during that time. So I did a few more Ironmans between 2008 to 2013. I think I did about seven of them, 7 or 8 of them. And I was trying to go under 11 hours and I wasn't there. But it's not about the 11-hour target. I think it was a sign that I think the body is breaking down. We're pushing it too much, and I can't compromise, a lot of things. So that's when I felt there's this work which is going really well. There's family. I had a 3-year-old son in 2013 by then, and there were days where you wouldn't. I mean, I get up in the morning, go for training, come back in the evening. He might be already in bed. So that's not the most ideal way to be there. So there was work, there was family, there was this triathlon Ironman as a passion, hobby, trying to do something and wanting to help people, lifestyle, a lot of things which I wanted to do, but I knew it's not something I can just jump out to. But eventually that balance was not right. I was, or let me put it this way, I was finding it hard to balance and do justice to all three. I think work wasn't getting compromised, but the sleep and the body was getting compromised a lot. So work, family, and my triathlon, three things sort of taking a lot of big portions of your day. I felt one had to go. So we had to keep two and one had to go. So pretty much I said, can move out of corporate and work. Can I make Ironman triathlon my work? And I also wanted to always popularize this back in India and let people know and do that. So that was that sort of, a little bit of a defining moment for me to say, let's move on. Focus on myself, my taking care of myself, more time with family, and maybe, maybe try to make this as a career and develop the sport in India next.
So you made it sound so simple, but we will try to uncover or unwrap this in terms of the journey also. But coming back to the Ironman part, so you're saying that you're done about seven by then, 2013, and now your count is 27. So that means over the last 11 years you have done 20. So once again, a round of applause for that. But just understanding the whole Ironman setup once again, my ignorance, apologies, but for our viewers as well, what is Ironman exactly? Is it other than being? We understand that it probably sits all the way at the top in that triathlon kind of hierarchy, if you may. But what exactly is Ironman?
Is the brand which has made triathlon of that distance popular.
Okay.
3.8K swim, 180K cycling, 42.2 running. that distance is nothing but an iron distance. You can't say people can organize their own event of that distance. They might not be able to call it Ironman because of trademark and IP reasons. Right. So the Ironman is a brand, but it is the distance of that race. It originated way back in Hawaii in the late 1970s, where I think about 13 people were sort of, trying to see who's the fittest. Is it a swimmer? Is it a cyclist? Is it a runner? Let us all bring this together. And I'm sure sometime over talking over a beer or something, they wanted to create a challenge. It started that way, but the origin is almost that way to try to decide that. And they combined an open water swim, which already existed. There was a marathon, there was a cycling around the island. That's where the 180 comes through. The distances came from that. Right. So they formed it, they reorganized a few things and decided to get started and called it the Ironman. And then it started becoming a bit of a legend and a cult following that it's the pinnacle of endurance fitness. Right. So along the way, a lot of triathlon was already growing and more distances and other formats, more sustainable formats of shorter distances came through. But then the company got formed, which branded that type of race as an Ironman, which continues now. It's a 45-year-old brand and a legacy and a history behind that. And then they started to create more races around the world uh, for the purposes of getting that popularized. And so that's where it was. One of my goals was to bring Ironman to India. Given I thought that's one way to create a bit of a spark in the sport. As much as I can do a few camps, clinics, and there were already a few other people who had done Ironman triathlons. They had started to do their own things. There were already some triathlons happening, which I was trying to work closely with them. The whole goal was to get Ironman to India and give people an opportunity to experience it because it's a fair amount of cost of sport to stay in the sport, to buy equipment, travel out, do a race and things. So wanted one in our home turf, so as to speak. So that was one of those things which I knew will take dedicated time, and I couldn't do it whether it's part time and as a hobby or a pastime or passion project and things like that.
Correct, correct. And we'll definitely be coming to that part of Yoska and Ironman in India. But one more question, just trying to understand in the Ironman scheme of things. So, how many countries does Ironman currently, what's the right way to ask it? Uh, how, how many countries has Ironman? Let's put it that way. I don't know if it's the right way to frame it, but hope you got the question.
No, there are more than 50 countries which host Ironman events.
Zero.
Half of them, yeah, 50, more than 50 countries host an Ironman event. Not all of them may have a full iron distance. Like India right now still doesn't have a full iron distance. We have a half iron distance, right? We have what is called as the 70.3. The 70.3 is the total number of miles. If you convert the distances into miles and half it, that's the half Ironman. So 70.3 is the number of miles. So 50 plus countries have a race. Maybe at least half of them may have a full line distance, and the other half have at least a half line distance.
Awesome. And how many have you been to, countries wise?
Not too many. It's quite an expensive sport in general to stay. So most of my races have been in Australia, New Zealand, and then I've been to Kona, which is the World Champs. That was US. So US, France, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand.
And
What am I missing?
India.
Yeah, that's
So
what.
that's why not India, but yeah, so obviously not India yet. But why do you call it an expensive sport?
Necessarily gone to too many countries.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I have participated in only of these handful of countries, and most of my races have been in Australia, given the proximity and things where I've been. But yeah.
Yeah. And but why do you call it an expensive sport?
It's an expensive sport because the cost of equipment for you to get into the sport, I would say cycle is one of the things which can cost a lot, all the way from, I mean, even the starting range could be a 1.5, 2,000 US Australian dollars or 75,000 Indian rupees, so as to speak, a starting range. It can go all the way to 3 lakhs, 4 lakh, 5 lakh Indian rupees. Obviously, running is not an expensive sport. There's just shoes and few things in terms of nutrition, swimming, and then there are accessories around it, not just the cycling part. There is obviously helmet, shoes, things come in. Smartwatches come in, nutrition comes in, swimming pool, memberships, maybe coaching fees, all that adds up month on month. It's a fair amount. And then to travel overseas, stay there for a few days, flight, food, race registration expenses. So it is an expensive sport or a lifestyle.
In that sense, fair enough. So I think my mind was headed in that direction. That if you have to actually travel to all these places, then that itself adds to a certain amount of the sports cost. But again, sorry, I have a lot of these silly questions, so apologies. What do you do about your cycle for all these? Right? How, like, I mean, that goes on a airplane. You say that you're going for an Ironman, so they have a secure way they take it, or is that how it
Yeah,
works?
yeah, you need to sort of unpack the bike or assemble a few things depending upon what type of box you carry. You can just remove the wheels and a few things, and it fits into a bike box, and that can be taken as your additional luggage.
Mm.
The size of that will be much larger than a suitcase, but the weight is still needs to be part of your thing. If the airline allows you 20 kilos, then that can be part of your 20 kilos. Just because you're carrying a cycle, they won't allow you 40 or 30. All right. Then you pay excess and things. So it's a bit of a hassle. And but yeah, we try to put as much padding and things and put it in the bike and put it in the safest way. But yeah, you just have to assume you just have to uh, assume that everything will be fine when it comes on the other side of it. Then you put your bike together, and then you unpack again. And after the race is the hardest one. Your race is on a Sunday. You're done whatever number of hours of racing. Then, unlike Sunday night, but Monday morning you'll have to pack your stuff and fly out. It's the most hardest of things I would say after a race to do. But yeah, that's the drill.
Absolutely. But you just kind of packed all of this thing together now. But let's unpack this just a bit more. I would assume that when, especially when they happen in wonderful locations like this, then there is a certain amount of tourism that kind of happens at the back of it, isn't it? I mean, you won't just fly to a Paris for this and Paris or wherever in France and just come back. You'll probably spend a couple of extra days. Is that kind of designed? Is that how the whole ecosystem works?
It's a destination sport, like you rightly identified. It's a destination sport. If you're going to spend X amount of months training for it and putting that in most cases, you might go there and spend a bit more time, mostly after a race, because it's very hard to do. I mean, you can always visit a few places in the build up too, but given it's a very demanding day on a Sunday, if the race is on a Sunday, Friday and Saturday, there are still a few things for you to take care of, dropping off your bike and things and your mind and all that. So you might not have a full day of sort of touristic activities and definitely not too much for the legs, but just trying to keep yourself there. But definitely afterwards, given all the effort people have put in, most people tend to take time unless I think most of my races I've had to almost drive back on Monday morning if it was a drive like Port Macquarie or other places. But yes, sometimes you go with family and try to take some time beyond that. Yes, it does add up to the cost, but it's another way to make a bit of a holiday out of it. Uh, but yeah, not the easiest of one to carry your cycle along to a lot. So a little bit of logistic and planning. But definitely people do take the time either sometimes before and after, or definitely after, with respect to time. If not in the same place where the race is happening, nearby regions, right? You might go to Port Macquarie, then might spend time in Sydney or something as an example. Or if you go to any of these New Zealand things, I remember going to Ironman New Zealand, and then we took a week after that driving around. The same with Hawaii. We went there a few days before race happened. Then we took a week completely to see the island. So definitely helps.
Wonderful. You just partly got into my second question. So, of all these, I mean, even Australia is beautiful. So, just because we live in Australia doesn't mean we have seen everything. But all the countries outside that you have been to, which ones stand out? Either in terms of just natural beauty or just the experience that you had there.
I think the experience of the race was definitely has to be Hawaii because that was the world champs, and I'd set myself a goal of getting there and things. So that one, and there's a lot of history behind the race started there, and so many people and all the people who motivate you and things have raced there and things, right? So that one was always, I think, will be special. The first one, Port Macquarie, continues to be special with respect to finishing that finish line, crowd. And even if it was 11 o'clock in the night, there were crowd, they were cheering. At 9 o'clock in the night, 10 o'clock in the night, it's dark, you're the only one, just a handful of people still trying to walk, run, finish it. So that is very special. But in terms of place, I would say New Zealand was great. I think it's a beautiful part of the world. Even Malaysia, we had some very nice times in there. But New Zealand definitely stands out. Just sheer natural beauty, the people, and just the whole
Where was
landscape is
where
very
was
beautiful.
South or North?
The race happens in Tapo, but we went a lot more places beyond that, Rotorua and all those places. So really nice.
Beautiful, beautiful. Uh, I have to ask you this one more thing before we move to the next topic. So you mentioned World Championship, right? Is that the right term? World Championship
Yeah.
twice now. So we have to understand this. What does it mean?
Like I said, there are lots of races happening in the year, and every race has a certain number of spots to qualify for the World Championships.
Hmm.
So, and then so in your age group, you might have one, two, three, or four spots depending upon how big is your age group, the number of participants. And then the guy who wins the age group gets a chance to say yes to the fact that he or she wants to go to the World Championship. If they choose not to take it, then it rolls down to the next one, and so on. So until the number of spots in that age group gets filled. So there could be about 30 to 40 spots across the race, and maybe one, two, or three, or sometimes a lot more in some cases in every age group for a male and a female.
Sure.
So you get that, and then totally about 2,000 men and maybe 2,000 women participate in the World Championship once a year.
Once a year. So this is when you say World Championship, it's not exactly countries representing there, but it's more like from every Ironman that has happened. By the way, I'm assuming that even for
Yeah,
women, it's called Ironman, not or Iron Woman, or
it's the same. Yeah.
so for all the Ironmans that have happened around the world, there'll be X number of people who. Okay, so now that we've
That's
understood
it.
that, how many times have you been to the World Championships?
Three times.
3 times. So obviously, what that means is that you have actually excelled within that particular Ironman that you went from, because of which you have found your spot there.
I think there are spots in that age group and things so for you to sort of qualify through that process.
And which ones were these? Would you remember which Iron?
2017 was Kona, Hawaii. 2022 was St. George in Utah in the US. And 2023 last year's was Nice in France.
So just to clarify, I understand this. So what you mean is that you participated in that Ironman, you did well there, and therefore you got to participate in the World Championship. Is that right?
No, the World Championship always used to happen in Hawaii until post COVID, they've tried to make a few changes. So
Okay.
the three races I told you were actually the World Championships. So
Oh, okay.
the Kona World Championships now, the men and the women have split it. What I mean by that is this year, the men's one will be in Kona, Hawaii. The women's one will be in Nice, France. Last year, it was the other way around. The men's one was in Nice, France. The women's one was in Kona, Hawaii. And so when I did the World Champs last year, I did it in Nice, France.
Hmm.
And the 2017 one, the first one I did, that was in Kona, Hawaii.
Hmm.
And because of COVID, the 2022 one was moved around a bit, and St. George, Utah was a one-off host to the World Championship. But the qualification for these would have happened in other races for me and for the others.
Thanks for mentioning this as well. But that's what I was trying to get to. That which race did you excel, which qualified you to the World Championship?
The first one was through a legacy program, which means if you do X amount of races. The Canes one is where I qualified. The Canes race in Australia. There I think I came 10th in my age group, which got me a spot.
Mhm.
And so the other ones were through certain other options of qualifying. So there is one to qualify, like I told you, which I did. Then there was a special invite for being the AWA Gold members. There were a few options under a few special invites for one of the World Champs. And one of the other ones was for a legacy program of having done X amount of races, got a special invite and things. So those were the three different ones. But in terms of qualification, it was Canes where I qualified for the World Champs.
Awesome. Uh, I completely lost track of time, Deepak, in this amazing conversation, and we have probably not even completed halfway. But I think we have to take a small break. I will request all our viewers to please stay hooked on to this. We will come back to you with the next part of this in the next episode. Don't go anywhere because so far you have only heard the journey of how Deepak has done 27 Ironmans. You heard the definition of one Ironman. It's an achievement to do one, but here is a gentleman who has done 27 of them. The second half is going to be all about his entrepreneurial journey from that point on. So, do come back. We'll hear more about that journey. Don't go anywhere. This is Sanjeev Kulkarni, your host and host on The Cool Karnis. Thank you.